And so Twin City Lines built standard streetcars from 1898 to 1917, built about 1,200 of them. And they changed over time, both as they were built, as technology developed, and then as they modified them over time. And so we're really going to get down in the weeds here on some of the details. And so this was one of the first two generators, cars 737 and 738. And here it is in 1898. They've got it on Brill trucks. You'll see Brill trucks on these early ones, and then they changed to the Baldwin trucks, which then Twin City Lines replicated, and they became Twin City Lines trucks. And Russ Wilson is like super into this, and there's a whole bunch of variations on it, and I can't keep it straight. So it's basically there's some Brill trucks, the occasional Bemis and Baldwins, and then we're done. So, and this was running the car in Sightseer service, and it's got an illuminated a colored glass destination sign up here.
So here's first they replicated the trucks. Is that like a patent violation?
I don't know. I'm sure. I have no idea. So 737, 738 were the first two. This is 739, the first real production one, and it's inside 31st Street shops. And this one happens to be sitting on Bemis trucks. And Bemis trucks were this early crude two motor. There's only one motor in each truck. And I think there were 25 horsepower motors. So these are really slow. And they quickly replaced them with the Brills that had 4 motors, 40 horsepower apiece. And this 2 or 3 shots of car 777 with all the sash gone are the only ones I've ever seen of a car with the sash taken out. Now, what I think the deal was before they always had a summer fleet and a winter fleet. They had open cars for the summer and closed cars for the winter. And I don't know this, but I think that was somehow a franchise requirement. Very expensive to have 2 parallel fleets. And so Twin City Lines, I think, wanted to make the point this was a convertible streetcar, that this car you could have for both summer and winter. See, we can take all the sash out of here completely, although then they never did that anymore. By the way, notice this has the early wood destination sign, and this had, I don't know, 4 or 5 sides, and you could rotate it. But it was kind of a hassle because, of course, it's up there. You probably needed a tool or something to do that. Also, notice there's no trolley retriever on these, and there wouldn't be for 5 years or so. Now, it's a wood.
Well, I was going to ask, the first one that you showed, the 738, I think it was. So it looks, when you say the sash, that's for the windows, but all that, is that grill work that they had when they took the windows off?
I meant to point this out. This is the, don't stick your hand. This is the thing that they would put in over the windows. Don't stick your hand out. And I was actually surprised to see it on the right side, the gate side, because in regular service, it was only on the pole side. Now you can look through and see that it's there. So they put up storm windows in the winter, and then they put up these grid windows in the summer, but only on the left side of the car. So this was something that was not repeated.
Okay.
And because it's a wood frame car, well, you can see all the ends of the tie rods that are running through the wood frame of the car to hold it all together.
Yeah, truss rods underneath.
Yeah, and truss rods underneath to tighten it up. You can see them here. And so they built the wood frame cars through 1904. Once again, here you got the Brill trucks on it. And it's a single gate. So they, and here are 2 of the somewhat later wood frame cars. This is the 800 series. This is at Mounds Park in Sightseer service, because they ran a Sightseer twice a day. They made a Minneapolis loop and a St. Paul loop. And the 2 loops, you could come together and put it together for an all-day thing if you wanted.
Hop on, hop off buses.
Sure. And then in about 1901, 1902 or so, they built this series of smaller cars, the Class C cars. And when they started, they had the Bemis truck, and then as you can see, they upgraded them with the Brill trucks. Now, all the cars that wound up having the Brill trucks or the Baldwin trucks with 40 horse motors were called slow cars because they were slower. And starting really with about 1300 or so, 1239 was considered a slow car. 1300, they had moved up to 50 horse, and those became the fast cars. And they always drew a distinction between them. But these little Class C cars were designed for the smaller lines. So,
Aaron?
yes,
Did they use slow cars and fast cars on different routes?
yes, they did, because they tried not to mix them, because the fast cars would catch up to the slow cars. You have bunching. So now you see we're up to 1026. 1026 and into the 1100s was the end of the wood car era, the wood frame car era. And here you see you got double gates now. So now we'll take a look at the gates. Here's one of the really early ones with single gate. Whoops. And you'll notice once again that there's no retriever here. There's a little step going up, and they just kind of take the pull rope and wrap it around the little step to keep it from flopping around. Now here we are up to car 1130. Now we're into steel frame cars, double stream rear gates, Baldwin trucks. And this has got a retriever. As a matter of fact, there were two models of retrievers. This is the later one. This is what you'll find on the back of 1300 now. And this is an earlier one, even though it's car 1310. This has got the early model retriever. This is we actually have three of these. This is what Dennis Stevens found at a farm sale. The people with the farm sale did not know what they were. And he went up this trolley tree, and he got them for like 20 bucks. And John Postal has rebuilt one of them. And so these were kind of the retrievers from the 20s and the 30s. And then after that, it was this retriever. So if you look at it in detail, see it's got this little center point, and here's the other retriever. It has kind of sticks out further. Now, you can see that they just went to the triple stream gates because they felt that it was necessary to instruct people to go in here and go out over there. And then here's the only photo we have of one of the male satchels. And there's a rack on the back here, and I'll show you the next picture so you can see. Let's see. Nope, that one doesn't have it. But this is what the postal employees would put on here locked to carry to another post office. And all of at least the later steel underframed standard cars had them. Here you see the rack right here. And this one here has already been, they put a front exit door on. I'm getting a little ahead of things, but they felt the need to indicate that, yes, this is a front exit car.
What is that up on the roof there?
This right here?
Yeah.
That's the smoke jack. They've gotten rid of, when they went and they put the front exits in, they took the big heaters like the heater that we put on the front platform of 1239, and they replaced it. They replaced it and the hot water heating system with forced air and this little heater that they could go and stoke from outside the car without having to climb into the car. And so there were forced air ductwork underneath the car to carry it around, and then there was a stack, an exhaust stack, and this is where the exhaust stack came out.
If these cars have been electric for so long, why didn't they have electric heat when they switched to electric?
I have always wondered. They wound up putting electric heaters in the platforms, but they kept the coal heaters, and that seemed to me to be completely illogical because somebody had to go and constantly stoke them. You had to haul coal all over the system and ash all over the system. And they only did the 60 or so cars like 1300 with 100% electric heaters. You would think that they would have jumped on that, but they didn't.
Because an electric heater is about as simple electrical device as there is.
Oh, sure. And they had problems with fumes in the cars. They had occasional cars burn up because of fires, and it was just a big hassle to begin with. But they did it. So here's car 1419. Now we're down up the triple stream gates. And this shows real well the pre-1920 color scheme, which was the yellow, but it's got the pinstriping, the silver gold leaf pinstriping. Same thing with the numbers in gold and the outlining on the doors in gold. And so when we wanted, when 1239 was originally restored, Bill Graham went and put the later color scheme, which has the green numbers and no striping, but he put striping on the doors. And it's like, Bill, you know, that doesn't, that's anachronistic. He said, well, I like the way it looked. So, so anyway, we've undone that.
Bill also liked flames on the front end of the car.
Yeah. So anyway, for a while on the suburban lines, they had detachable headlights, and that's what this shows.
Why would they be detachable?
Detachable, yeah, you'd take them off, and if you didn't need it, you just left it at the car barn.
I mean, in other words, if they were running during the day, they just took them off?
Yep.
Seems like a lot of work for.
Right. So after a while, they went to attached headlights, but there are multiple forms of headlights. This is the one, the early one with the big chimney on it.
Oh, that's why, because they weren't just electric. That makes sense why they would take them off. They don't need them then.
Right. The original ones were not electric.
Okay.
That's kind of a carryover from early railroading days when the engineer of a locomotive often personally owned the headlight of his engine, and he would take it off and keep it.
Yeah.
They were painted in fancy designs, and you know, each one was kind of unique.
In systems with double-ended cars, they would have one headlight, and the motorman had to haul it back and forth when the car would reverse. So anyway, in 1905, they took car 1092, which was a wood frame car, and they put a second deck on it and ran it the first year on Excelsior. It would make a round trip every 2 hours because, you know, 45 minutes each way. But it wasn't really very popular because it was open. And, you know, if it rained, you got rained on. And so then, of course, the second one was car 1145, where they had a much more enclosed, and this was a steel frame car. And they went and they built a number of these with all the heavy framing to anticipate having a removable roof. And that's what it was. It was a removable roof. The idea was to have these out here in the summertime, take them off in the wintertime. And, but of course it didn't fit in the car barn. It took a long time to load and unload. And you still just had curtains down. You didn't have proper windows except in the front. And they just decided not to do it. But they went and they built these cars that were really, really heavy because of the extra bracing. And so 1145 kept running until about 1939 or 41 or so, but as a single decker.
Well, they had to make the overhead wire a lot higher too. That seems like a lot of.
Well, that might have been an issue as well. I mean, you know, I'm surprised at how high it is here. So yeah, that I don't know exactly what they did with that, but
Are we seeing the stairway to the second deck going right over the motorman there?
that's correct. That is correct.
So the motorman was essentially blind on the right-hand side?
Yeah, that was probably an issue too.
Yeah.
And of course, so here's 1149. This is one of the sister cars, and this was the final configuration. And of course, in the high speeds, they had the indicator lights to indicate if this was first, second, third section or something, because they ran them as trains. They had the steel cowcatcher, and there were no peanut row seats. All the seats faced forward. And of course, these cars had 75 horsepower motors and were geared for 60 miles an hour. And so half of them ran to Stillwater, half of them ran to Lake Minnetonka. And the Stillwater cars, they wound up gearing them down to 50 to handle the hills in Stillwater, because those are the steepest hills in the whole system. And here's another picture, and this illustrates two things. First, all of the Stillwater and Lake Minnetonka, all the Stillwater and Lake Minnetonka cars operated as train numbers, and this is train number 8. And there might be 5 cars in sections running as train number 8, a couple of thousand feet apart. But they all had train numbers, including the Stillwater local streetcars had train numbers up in the window. The other thing is that illustrates is that all the cars originally had openable front windows. Now, in our car, this window still opens, but these windows are now fixed. And I'll kind of show you how. But here, you could open the whole thing up and just have breeze in the car.
It's got a locomotive style pilot too, Aaron, huh?
Oh, yeah,
That
yeah.
pretty good? Yeah.
An actual cow catcher.
Yeah.
So this is one of the Shorties 971, but this was a fairly good look at a Baker heater, which is exactly what we just put in 1239. It also shows some of the scrapers in the up position for scraping snow and ice off of the rail. But if you look, this is the original window configuration, and you'll notice it's a smaller upper sash and a larger lower sash. And we get into a little bit later, you'll see how that changed.
So these are the combination windows already by now.
These are not storm windows. I'm not sure I have a picture of a storm window. This is just the regular windows.
Car's got a peanut whistle too.
Yeah, this one sticks up. Later on, they lie down. A lot of little details. So anyway, we're talking about heating. So first you had the Baker heaters. Then they went to the Peter Smith heater on the left here. And then, as Twin City Lines frequently did, Twin City Lines said, oh, heck, we can build those. And they, as you can see, this is the Twin City Lines model heater. And it's really just a rip-off of the Peter Smith heater. So this is what they did in the later cars. And of course, you had to come in and you had to climb into the car and stoke this thing. And then it was a hot water system.
Was it
And you also
coal or wood?
coal. And then you also see the pretty minimalist stool that they had to sit on. Okay. So now, once again, some interior details. This is the cars as they originally built. And with 1239, you had the full bulkhead with the door into the motorman's compartment. And the double-length peanut rows in the back, because everyone got on and off the back, so you needed this extra room, and the crossway seats going up. And the fare, this was before fare boxes. The fare register is up in the front. And when they put in fare boxes, that's when they move the fare register to the rear. The other thing you'll notice, because you have the natural wood ceiling like in 1239, and you got the lights right above the windows on the side, you also have the lights up here. You have a light to illuminate the fare register, and you have a pair of lights behind each of the destination signs. And when Carl Jones had the ceiling out of 1239 to rewire it, he said it looked like there were additional receptacles up here. And what we had not known about until we looked at these pictures were these additional lights behind the destination sign. So he wound up putting in 6 new fixtures, 2 for the front and 2 for each side. And so here you are looking back with the peanut row and all that. And here you can see there's no backup controls in here. You had a conductor. The conductor guided the motorman as he backed up on a Y. And here you see the lights by the destination sign. So anyway, this is a drawing that somebody made of the front platform during the original era when everybody got on and off the back. And one thing you'll notice is that the controller is smack dab in the middle. Later, it shifted to the left because they created entries and exits here. And then, of course, here it says Baker heater. And it actually shows a little coal bin right here, as well as the big wheel handbrake. And so this is that configuration. Whoops. And here you see the 1920 color scheme, post 1920 with the striping gone. I don't know why it keeps doing that. And they've already modified one of the windows. I'm not quite sure what's going on there. And so this is car 1136, and this was a State Fair office car, but it was the last one in the system in its original configuration with double stream gates and a motorman's door. And this is what we use to instruct us on how to paint 1239. So you can see it's got the army green on both sides of the door and then the forest green on the door. So then in 1916, they made this train 1590 and 1590A. They had so much ridership, they said, we've got to go and create trailers. And so they came up with the first version of the lightweight truck that would be used under the lightweight car, but this is underpowered. And then they took 20 of their newest cars and set them up to haul 20 of their really old wood frame cars that they put on these new trucks and took the electrical out of and turned into trailers. And so they only did this one in 1916, and then in, I want to say, 1923, they built like another 20 of these. And they lasted until the 1930s, and then by then the ridership was down. They didn't need them anymore. So what you had a separate conductor for this car in the back. So what they did is they got to double the capacity for a 50% increase in crew. And we have two views of car 1788, before 1920 and after 1920. And here, a couple of times they experimented with a folding door, a sliding exit door, before deciding that really wasn't the way to go. They knew they wanted to put in a front exit door to get one-way movement through the car, but this was an experiment that they really didn't repeat. Now here's the same car, 1788, with the folding door is what they really did. And here you have an exit only sign and then an enter sign down here because, well, just kind of let everybody know. And so then they went and took about 500 of the cars and put the front exit in. And originally there was no sheet metal here. And so what you see then is a little later in the 30s, they went and they put this kind of decorative sheet metal on both sides of the door. And here you see it maybe a little better on one of the cars on the inner campus line. And at the same time, they also put new trucks under them. And so with that, they moved the fare register to the back starting in about 1920, and they put the rear fare box up because they didn't have fare boxes before. That was something new. And in the 30s, they finally got rid of the fare register because it seemed to be a redundancy for counting the fares and keeping the conductors honest. But the intercampus cars did not have fare boxes. The intercampus cars had fare registers, which is why we still had access to some fare registers. So with the front exit, this is the front platform, and the controller, as you can see, has been moved over here. And now there's no longer, they've gone to the forced air heating, so you don't have the big stove on the front. But you still have the big wheel for the emergency brake, and this is interesting, it says sand right here, because that later migrated back under the seat. And so this is when they had to go and kind of put in this enclosure for the motorman. And here's kind of a detail of where you would stoke the fire. This is where you would keep some coal here to stoke it. And then I guess this is for dumping ashes out down here. So anyway, starting about 1928, they say, well, we've got to go and design a car that can be run either with or without a conductor. And so this was the first attempt at that. And here, because they were handing the passengers a mixed message, you got to get on at the front if there's no conductor. You got to get on at the back if there is one. They put this entrance sign up, which they did not repeat. And they also went and had the solid green door, which they didn't repeat. So this was, you can see how they would experiment with stuff. So here, of course, is how they turned out. This is how 1300 turned out. And here, this is where you see the windows are all different. This window stayed the same, and you can open it. But the front window became fixed, and you had a windshield wiper power windshield wiper in later years. Before that, you had a windshield wiper that was manual. There was a scissors type windshield wiper at the top, and then they went and made this window fixed and this center pane going in at an angle. And I think that might have been to reduce glare, because that's usually the reason you do it. If you look at things like airport control towers, the windows tilt in, that eliminates glare. And another view, once again, just like 1300 is. And the interior seating, they took one of the two big bench seats and put it in the front, because you get on or off in the front or the back. So, and then they shoved all the transverse seats back. Now, the other thing they did, of course, is they painted the ceilings white and they put some bulbs in the center. And what they discovered, of course, was then you didn't need separate light fixtures behind the destination signs. This was enough to illuminate the destination signs. And so they wound up cutting the number of light fixtures in half, from about 16 down to 8 when they did this. And so then here's the configuration of the front platform. And this, of course, as you see with 1300. And they got rid of the big brake wheel, and they put a better seat in. Controller stayed in the same place.
You know, that the previous plan like this that you'd showed us, when they still walled off the Motorman, I would think would have conceivably made a difference in 1918 flu outbreak, thinking of our pandemic and exposure issues now.
That's true. It took place after the flu.
Ah.
But in both cases, what they were doing was they were keeping the motorman completely separate, whether it was before that or after it. The motorman was always separate. But yeah, you know, I hadn't thought of that, but that might have had an impact. And so here you see one of the cars that has been converted, but it's still got the stool seat. Everything else is about, this one has the manual wiper up at the top. So you had to reach up and wipe the thing. And so then all the cars, as they were one-manned, got the Twin Cities number 9 trucks with roller bearings. This is the first time they went to roller bearings. So this is what's under 1300. And then they one-manned them in the early 30s and proceeded to have some kind of accidents backing up over things or over people. And so that's when they put in the rear control as a safety thing, starting in about 1934 or so. And that seems to be a repeat. Okay. And so here is, as we see it now, with kind of more stuff. Here you've gone to the seat like in 1300. This one has got the power windshield wiper. You see him hanging his changer up there. And then this is post-World War II. See this thing down here, that footrest? That was something that was requested by the motormen to free up their hands so they could go and hold the brake handle over with their knee while they were doing other stuff with their hands. And so we have this on 1300. It folds up, or you can use it. So otherwise, it's pretty much as you see it today. And so then starting in the 1940s, they were getting tired of having to replace all the wainscoting. So they started when they came through the shop, replacing the wainscoting with sheet metal. And to make it look a little more streamlined, they went and made it flush with the bumpers, which also had the impact in the back of making it impossible for little kids to climb on and hold on, which was always a classic thing. And this is the last slide, and they did this on a few cars. They put in these window guards, and the windows would go up so far, the windows did not drop down into the pocket. And this was a replacement then for those big hanging those big grid screens on. But they didn't do this on that many cars, I don't think.